Here.
Good rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We start with public participation and recognition. And this is the Illinois State Board of Education recognize the Circle of Quality and the Early Learning and Development Centers preschool for all PFA program has achieved an Accelerate Illinois, the state's quality recognition and improvement system for early learning and development programs. Accelerate unifies all the state's early learning programs under a common set of standards across multiple settings to provide families with important information about quality or early learning programs in our community. Based on the most recent monitoring results, the Early Learning and Development Center has achieved the Gold Circle of Quality. A certification to recognize this award will be sent from the Illinois Network of Child Care Resources and Referral Agencies. So, Lisa?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Want to say anything?
Well, we had our audit last spring, and the teachers all worked very hard, and there's a lot of criteria that you have to meet, and they did it, and the students did it, and we all did it together. Now we're gold.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks so much for all your work.
Well, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not in order. Next, we have board committee reports and correspondence. Anybody?
Communication committee met together, presentation from Proudly DeKalb. Presentation was made, everybody came and the presentation was made. We talked about different ways that we could communicate and liaison with Proudly DeKalb, and it was a fruitful meeting. But we have some distance yet to go to figure out ways that we're going to work together. So it was well attended, and Ben was there, and we made some progress.
Our FFA auction is next Wednesday. They have a dinner, a pork chop dinner, and then they also have an auction. And they actually do auction off live animals. But they get some really pretty good donations from the public, and it's really a fun time. If anybody gets a chance, it's a different evening to attend. It's pretty cool.
When is this?
A week from tomorrow at the high school.
It's fun to go just to watch people bid. It's all right sometimes what they'll put up for certain things. You know.
Very generous.
Might end up taking a pig home in the back of the car. So.
Yeah.
There's a dinner before.
A dinner before.
Okay.
Chili dinner.
Next, we have presentations. District 428 Social Emotional Plan. Christy Meyer.
Yes, and we have Amy, Dr. Luckner, and Dr. Becker joined in.
So we wanted to update you on our social emotional plan for the district. But first off, we'd like to tell you how we got to this point. Got it. I have this little Clicker. We're fancy now. Clickers. So I wanted to tell you how we got to this point. Last year, we spent that year in our planning, and you saw the fruits of that, some of that labor in our assessment where we pulled together our data, our district data. We gathered that, reflected upon it, and saw the areas that we needed to work upon. This all came about because really we were getting reports from our buildings, our principals, our teachers, also the reports, emergency reports and crisis reports, suggesting that we needed to put a plan into place. And so we reflected upon that data. We surveyed the teachers to see what areas in particular they needed the professional learning opportunities. And we then designed and implemented some of those learning opportunities for our teachers, the ones that really were crucial points. For example, Dr. Becker and Lisa Gorshals provided some key targeted professional development in the area of non-compliance was one of them. And of course, Lisa Gorshals and Tricia Bailey did CPI training as well, those de-escalation strategies. So we looked at what the teachers were needing right then and tried to respond with some targeted professional learning. As I said, we communicated what our needs were as a district to the Board of Education. It's something we did, and our recommendations for additional personnel. And again, want to thank you for listening to that data and responding. Then what we did was we investigated, we researched various models, social emotional plans. I know that you've been looking at that CASEL website, and that is something that we referred to quite a bit in our research. And then we wrote the social emotional plan. We're going to highlight pieces of that social emotional plan tonight, but certainly if you have any specific questions about the plan itself, please let us know. We have it linked there for you. And in particular, last year, we took time as an elementary group to research, and we identified a specific Tier 1 social emotional pilot that we are trying out. And I know that that is in every one of our buildings. There are a couple of teachers using Tier 1 social emotional curriculum called Caring School Communities.
The kind of framework that guides our work with our social emotional plan is adapted from CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And it's really, the visual we use is this three-legged stool. And the point of that is to really emphasize that these are three equal pieces of social emotional learning, and our goals fall under those areas. That these are interrelated areas, all which are necessary to support the social emotional learning of our students in our district. The first area, which is kind of hard to read, is supportive, equity-based positive classroom climate. So it's about the climate of the school and the classroom, so we have goals under that area. Then we have the middle area, which is integration of social emotional learning into the academic instructional practices. So how are we integrating those standards or addressing those standards in our ELA work, in our NAB work, in the different content areas that we have. And then the third piece is the explicit instruction of SEL skills. So this is really kind of the direct instruction that we are providing to our students in order to build those skills in those areas. So the first two kind of maybe are, one is the kind of general climate that supports our students. The second one is how we infuse it with our academic curriculum. And then the third one is how we explicitly teach those skills to our students.
Okay, so here are some highlights, excuse me, for this school year. And like Christy said, we started implementing some of this last year. And we've got a lot going on, as you can see. I know it's kind of small, but we're trying to hit the highlights here. So one thing we're actively working with is our outside consultant for our PBIS, positive behavior interventions and support. We're doing looking at our PBIS systems that we've had in place for many years now, but she's helping us to tighten those up, realign them, so they realign into what the state expects. She's collecting a lot of data for us, meeting with school teams. That's been a really helpful process. And then those Tier 1 teams, PBIS Tier 1 teams, are revising all of our social skill lessons. So really trying to realign those into our state of Illinois social emotional learning standards, and also realigning them based on what our PBIS data is indicating. As Christy alluded, our elementary teachers are piloting a Tier 1 social emotional curriculum, Caring School Community, that we met as a committee and decided upon. Kim's been kind of looking forwarding that initiative, but that's going on in each one of the buildings, and so far I've heard some positive feedback on that. So we'll be collecting some data on that and evaluating that at the end of the year.
Where does that come from? Caring School Community?
It is from, what is the?
It is from Collaborative Classroom. It's a nonprofit company that's all put together by teachers, retired teachers. Our writing program, being a writer that we adopted a couple years ago, and our intervention program we have are all from that same company.
We're working on training our administrators on the Illinois social emotional learning standards, and then working with our administrators on how to bring that to their own school-based teams. Pre-K elementary and secondary curriculum are working on incorporating the anti-bias framework into standards, so that and you'll see in that plan that we're trying to interlock this a lot with our diversity plan to make clear that we don't have two different initiatives going on. This is really one initiative, but we're taking up part of the social emotional bent of the diversity plan. So we're looking at that and looking at those standards and adjusting them to make sure they fit what our needs are here in DeKalb, developmentally for our students.
But for the record, on that anti-bias framework, I have major objections on your source for that.
Okay.
I don't particularly care for it. I feel that it's I think it has some real major problems with it. Did you had thoughts on that?
Oh, you bet I do. Yeah, I have some questions. So yeah, well, thank you very much for including that along with all these other things. And thanks, Jeff, for asking about Caring School Community if that was sourced from. I don't know anything about the collaborative classroom, but I'll look it up. I did look up the hyperlink. Again, thanks for the hyperlink, the anti-bias framework. I found out it goes to this other Poverty Law Center. I have a really big problem with those people. Okay, it's ironic that you want to incorporate a framework from them against bias. They are a very biased organization. And proof of that comes, for instance, in the June judgment against them in court of law, the $3.3 million to a fellow in the United Kingdom who is trying to, a Muslim person who is trying to help resolve the issue of extreme Islamism and so on. And there's any number of other examples. All you got to do is Google Southern Poverty Law Center, and you will find all kinds of stuff that, in my view at least, indicates they're biased as an organization. Now, they've been around since 1971. That's when I was in college. And I don't remember them back then. I remember the American Civil Liberties Union, but I don't remember this other Southern Poverty Law Center. But anyway, boy, when I started hearing about these guys in the last few years, things went up, and I said, something's going on here. And then when I heard in June about this judgment, an actual legal judgment against them, they had to issue an apology to this person, Majid Nawaz, the William, I think, Foundation. This is in Britain. Anyway, they're headquartered in Montgomery, Alabama. They have an operating budget of about $40 million a year. They have a foundation fund with almost $500 million, $435 million, I think it is, according to their latest audited financial statement. So I have real big red flags going up about this particular entity. When I looked at when I went to the hyperlink and looked at the outcomes that they hope for and examples of discussions that might happen in the classroom, some of it is good and some of it is not so good. So I don't want 428, in my personal opinion anyway, and I'll see, hopefully we'll see what the board thinks about this. I don't want 428 associated with this agency as long as they're in this current situation of I believe, being shown as biased themselves. They have people on their hate map, for instance, Rand Paul, Steve King from Iowa. These are all elected representatives. Any number of elected officials who are elected with large margins of victory, standard ordinary American elections. And these guys put them on their hate map. They have what they call
The fact that they
intelligence.
even have a hate.
Oh, it's crazy.
It speaks against the organization.
And they're unfortunately not being very careful in how they vet some of the people that they're putting on this.
So Carrie, I don't mean to interrupt you. I do feel as though, first and foremost, the implementation of the social emotional plan, as Dr. Becker was stating, we are weaving this with the diversity plan, and in doing so, we're taking a careful look at all of the materials that we're looking to utilize to develop our plan, okay? The parts that we would be utilizing are grounded.
Well, Christie, right there, it says very plainly, you're working on incorporating the anti-bias framework into standards
So
for
we're,
pre-K, elementary, and secondary, right?
right, so we're looking at how they interface with our Illinois social emotional standards to help us meet those standards. So we don't really take anything like that and just verbatim. Jenny, maybe you can speak to a little bit about how teams are looking at these and differentiating, and like I said, making sure that it matches onto what we need.
I just don't understand why, and I'm glad you included this because I wouldn't have known otherwise, but I don't understand how you would want to include a hyperlink to an agency as SPLC is right now. It's a real hot button issue right now, and I hope that you are understanding where you're looking when you choose what to incorporate. Now, on the face of it, without respect to where SPLC is today, and again, they've been around since '71. A lot of people think they did some good work in times past. But at any rate, I looked at the face of it before I went to the deep research that I did on the organization itself. And I just looked at their outcomes and their points of social justice, and the classroom discussions. And for instance, when they get to grade levels 3 through 5, they're talking about labor laws. Cesar Chavez, and they're building in the illustration of classroom scenario. And they're talking about things that I think are way over the head of the 3, 4, and 5 grade child. So just on the face of the material alone, I have a problem with it, regardless of who the source is.
Okay. In all due
But,
respect,
may I ask?
Yes.
So what's resolution
Yeah, good
here?
question.
Is it the organization, or is it the framework?
Well, the framework itself, as the structure of it, is fine. On the left-hand column, they have the point 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on of social justice. And then they have, a series of expected outcomes, several sentences about what each child hopefully will learn and incorporate into the thinking process. And then on the far right side, they have an illustration of what the conversation might look like in the classroom. The framework's excellent. And again, this.
that's what we're referring to.
Well,
And cherry pick this. I mean, in other words, if that's the case, then create your own.
yeah, exactly.
In other words,
If
if
you want to use
that's the
that
case,
as a
don't
framework basis.
take it wholesale, take it retail. In other words, take the parts of it that you feel are appropriate and then make your own outcomes. The problem with it is that problem with what I've heard so far as much of our planning is we talk about our goals, but we really don't talk much about a framework that we have set up ourselves. We talk about other people having set up frameworks, but I'd like to see a framework that we put together and say, these are the goals we have for our kids.
I was
So
gonna
we
say,
do
So the
have that.
social emotional plan,
That
that's the
is-
goals we have for our kids.
Yes.
Jenny, I'm gonna let you talk about, you could help me understand how these frameworks would look, let's say when you have a fourth grade working together. And how we take what they have and make it into our own.
So, for example, I was in looking at the elementary curriculum documents today, and, for example, kindergarten to start the year, they spend a lot of time talking about communities and society and why do we have rules and those sorts of things. Again, because we're trying to lay the foundation of the importance of having a routine, a structure, that kind of thing with kindergartners. And it's not just in kindergarten. Again, we've got elementary principals sitting here that can speak to this, but it's helping our students understand how you build that sense of community and the importance of treating each other with respect, valuing each other and the differences that we bring to the table. And so, very well, and you had mentioned about a conversation with Cesar Chavez and labor unions and things like that. We do have conversations with our students about that to help them understand our world today and what it looks like. And so we do take the Illinois social emotional standards and the social justice standards that are within that anti-bias framework, and they really do support each other really, really well if you look at the social emotional standards.
Well, Jenny, when I went down the list, and I can read them off right here, I've got it in front of me. I found these things to be very difficult for a child of that age to grasp. Nothing that's wrong with it in the sense of it's great if someone can achieve it. I just don't think that kids in that grade level can achieve it.
I'll challenge that because, I certainly.
Are you reading it? Have you read it, Rick?
Yeah, I've got a 13-year-old. I'm challenging the aspect of our kids ready for that.
Well, I'm talking 3 through 5,
Yeah.
not 13-year-olds.
Right.
I have a question. Are we gonna break down curriculum material here at the board?
No, but I'm just saying, I think that kids are not only able, but are ready. And to learn much more about our world as a larger stage than what we recognize. And I would suggest that we let this breathe a little bit. And certainly I'm not dampening David's concerns. I'm just saying I think we should let this whole thing breathe a little bit and let these people finish their work and see what's gonna become.
I'm just gonna jump in just a second here.
Jeff, wait a minute, don't jump. You've sat there and you've jumped in 3, 4, 5 times. There's enough jumping.
He has to make a quick comment, and then if you want to make a comment, you can.
Right? So the point being, I guess, that we have input as a board, and in fact, you guys have been very good about bringing us books, bringing us texts, bringing textbooks in front of us, and letting us know about texts that you're putting in front of the kids as a method of inclusion of the board in the teaching process, which is really part of what we do as a board. So I think that the thing that I'm saying here is that this is really as much a textbook in some ways or this is a learning methodology as much as a textbook. I mean, this particular inclusion of this method of teaching is as much a textbook as much a methodology as a textbook. So we have objections, or we could have theoretically objections. We haven't had any, particularly with your textbooks, but Harry is saying that he has a very large problem with this particular inclusion.
I think that's okay. First of all, I want to thank Rick for the recommendation that we breathe a little bit into this. It's probably a darn good thing that we slow down. When we have anger about what organization produced it, we stop looking at the content. This was much like Jamie's point. We are not going to create the curriculum tonight. We have dealt with and created pieces of curriculum based on what our teachers tell us are the things that are appropriate instruction. This aligns with it. It isn't it. We are not giving this to students as a document. We are not producing this as an example of what student reading levels are supposed to be. This is for the teacher to say, get to these goals. Here's something that might happen. And that's what it is. I strongly object, Gary, to the notion of calling the Southern Poverty Leadership Council biased without mentioning what particular biases they have. I believe they are biased against poverty. Comes right from the name. Not a bad thought. I think you are too. But let's move on beyond that. These folks have something to
Howard,
say.
have you read the website? I mean, the name.
No, I don't have to read the website. I've
Let's
known
let
of
the
the
ladies,
organization.
let's let them finish their program.
Well, I brought this up just so that, in response, to your questions in regards to our structure, our format, it is written as goals and tasks, objectives written to those goals. So Jeff, you had mentioned that, so I just wanted to bring you to,
What did I mention? I'm sorry.
you mentioned that why don't we create our own structure? And I'm just saying to you, we have. That's the social emotional plan. It has goals, it has objectives. The simply referring to a guidance document that we've garnered a reference to that's a guiding document, a reference. But our District 428 has created this document. These are all our goals.
Objectives.
Pardon me?
I said, I'm asking a question. Is this document the goals and objectives here?
Yes, sir. There are goals, our
That our
objectives
staff wrote.
that our staff has written and has committed to. And what Dr. Becker is referring to right now is really those ideas that we're already working towards and checking off just in our first year. I'm very proud of what District 428 has done in the really to start last year and to hit the ground running this year. Very proud of our efforts. And I just want to say, in regards to our press being here tonight, that's the focus of this. The focus is that these folks in this room, working very collaboratively together, are working for the health and welfare of our students through a collaborative effort to work toward their social emotional learning. That's the key of this plan. So I don't want us to lose that focus.
Christy, just one thing. And as we continue with the presentation, let's keep in mind what Christy just said, because that is our goal, is for the students, for their social emotional.
Their health, their social emotional health.
Could I, Lisa, back up this to strategy 2.1.2? Because that hyperlink is in there again. Yeah, that's right, 2.1. So it says the anti-bias framework hyperlink, which goes to the agency I spoke of. Professional learning will be provided to pre-K-12 building administration and staff. Well, if you're doing it with your own materials, and if that's just a reference work, why is it included with the hyperlink in what you say you're going to provide to staff?
I would say it's a guidance document. It's a guidance document, and in interest of keeping the focus on the whole plan, what I would like to recommend is that we get together, discuss how we might communicate that, and then if you have further questions, we can respond to that. Would that be fair?
Well, I have plenty of further questions, especially when something like that, I mean, to me, that means you're going to lean on that particular document as you proceed, that's what we said.
I think your point's well taken, but we gotta move forward. I think we gotta move forward.
So you made a recommendation to
That's it.
keep communication.
I think we're gonna.
Yes, I am recommending that we move
Let's
forward,
move forward.
but certainly
Yeah.
reflect upon that. So timeline, there we go. And I'm sorry. Thank you, Lisa. All right.
Yeah, so we're also looking at social emotional screening instruments throughout pre-K through 12. We've been doing social emotional screening in our K-5 buildings through a measure that was pretty low cost. But now through the adoption of our Fast Bridge system, they also offer a social emotional screener that we get as part of the price that we pay for Fast Bridge. And we think it might have provide us with some richer data, and we can drill that down into pre-K and look at how that applies up to 12. So we're hoping to get a more unified screener, but we'll be exploring that this year because it's kind of a big decision. So we're working on that as a team. Our secondary clinicians are investigating tier 2, 3 social emotional intervention. So like Christy said in the timeline, last year our elementary mental health folks got together and did some research about what are some of the best interventions for the common issues our kids are presenting with, depression, anxiety, anger control, things like that. What are the best resources out there? And looking at that and using some of our special ed funding to purchase those instruments to make sure that we have parity across our elementary school. And so now our secondary clinicians are starting that process. We also did some trauma-informed intervention training for all our psychs and social workers right before school started. We're seeing a lot of our kids that present with needs that look like they may have been traumatized. Our role here in the school is not to do really deep therapy about if they have trauma in their life. It's about how to mitigate that and help them be successful in the classroom. And so that's what those interventions focus on, getting the kids back in the classroom with the level of support they need to be academically and socially successful. So those are two trainings that were really well received. And then finally, our primary clinicians, our elementary clinicians, are starting to implement those evidence-based tier 2 and 3 social emotional interventions. So making sure that we're matching what the assessed need is with the research-based intervention and collecting some data to see how that's going. What we're really trying to do is align that to our data team process. So we do that already for academics. Anytime a kiddo needs reading intervention at the elementary, we have evidence-based interventions that we work together as a team to match them with, monitor their progress to make sure it's being effective. We're trying to align our social emotional systems with that to make sure that we're doing the best we can.
Which is really exciting for our clinicians and our principals, because as a data team, we look at, we have our assessments that analyze where students fall, where are their strengths, where are their challenges. And with those challenges, we really go to a grid of interventions to see how we can match up what they need. Now we can do that, with our social emotional needs as well. So in the end, for our SEL plan, this plan will be funded primarily through Title I, II, and the IDEA grant funds. Also Title IV funds are being investigated. And any expenditure outside of those grants, we will come to you. But everything has already been reflected in the 2018-19 budget. Have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the non-business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through G.
So moved. Second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeff Algren? Yes.
Terry Malott?
Yes.
Victoria Newport?
Yes.
Rick Smith?
Yes.
Howard Salton?
Yes.
We have the business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the purchase order purchase order requisition list as attached.
So
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Malott?
Yes.
Victoria Newport?
Yes.
Rick Smith?
yes.
Howard Salton?
Yes.
Jeff Algren?
Yes.
Next is business and finance. And this is the Alpha Controls Controller. And this is Tammy Carson and Bell information item.
Ben and I wanted to come forward and bring to you some controllers and a project that we are going to need to be doing in the very near future. I do want to introduce Jeff Francis. Jeff is here from Alpha Control. Should there be any specific questions in regards to the projects that we're laying forth tonight?
So in the diagram that was attached in the board agenda item, you can basically see the devices that we're looking to place. And those are the UNC modules, the controllers that directly communicate with the switches and furnaces, the AC units, those buildings.
So back in 2009, when we opened up Cortland, is when we started our relationship with Alpha Controls. And we put in 2 controllers there and then 8 more at the high school a couple of years later. And then over time, added them to all of our buildings up till even recently. Lincoln was the first building to get, or sorry, the last building to get on board with the new chiller and the boiler. So we have the ability to control all of our buildings remotely when it comes to our HVAC systems. And then we were notified that the controllers at 4 of our buildings are at end of life, end of support. And fortunately, there is a rebate program available through ComEd that we know is available through the end of this calendar year. They haven't announced if they are or how much they will be renewing it for going into next year. So our intention is to move forward with this project. The price tag on the entire project for the high school, Brooks, Portland, and Huntley is over $280,000. With the ComEd rebate program, 140 of it, 50% of it would be covered. And also back in April, the board approved in addition to the operations and maintenance budget of $50,000 in expansion for HVAC improvements. So that will also be applied to this project, bringing it down to $90,000. We'll include it with the Brooks chiller replacement project that's coming forth if approved tonight as a requested bid, so the control update will be put into that project. This is it by another $11,000, which brings us down to a final price tag of $79,000. We have received confirmation from the ROE and from our architect that this project can be paid through life safety funds, so it can be the remaining $79,000 would come out of our life safety budget.
So what percentage of the ones are we replacing? I mean, of total are we replacing at this point? And do we have lifespan on the other ones? What's our projection for needing to replace the other ones at this point? Do we know?
Are you mean? The other ones are just starting out. They were developed about 2 years ago, 3 years ago maximum. Life expectancy of these stuff is usually about 25 years. Not more.
And we reached that on those, were those first generation? Okay, so, yeah, so we got the lifespan from what we expected out of those.
Yeah. They weren't just, they were not installed 25 years ago. They were installed some, earlier. But what happened is you guys heard about Target. Remember Target got hacked back about 6-7 years ago? No. It was hacked to the HVAC system. That threw up a big red flag through all the HVAC systems out there, just like Microsoft does. So all the HVAC people who produce this stuff said, okay, we got to do something about it. So they started incorporating cybersecurity in all their stuff now, which is good for you guys, good for hospitals, government buildings. While some of the older systems, the R2 UNC system, they decided this is already older. We're not going to support it anymore because we don't want to bring it up to the cybersecurity level as it is right now. Because they're already starting to come out with new products. So
Target, they got to client records through the HVAC system.
So
sorry, that's weird.
When I heard about it, so wow.
That's weird. Okay, so we've got our lifespan out of it, and we have. Sounds like we've got more lifespan. I mean, we've got a pretty good lifespan on the ones that the rest of the system.
Yes.
And then we will be putting together a plan for the remaining units in the rest of the buildings. There are 2 other versions, and G3 and AS versions. And so we will be putting a plan together so we can incorporate the replacements of those on a regular basis and fund that and put that in our budget.
I have a question. So I'm not sure who to look at, but I think you said, Ben, that there was a 2003 era server that some things must run on as a result of some of the vendors' software and equipment on, right? Mm-hmm. So what prevents us from having the same situation going forward? 25 years, that's a long time, lots of things change.
Our HVAC system is an outside facing like Target's was. And their vendor also left theirs outside facing accidentally. So if there were multiple things that went wrong through a third party organization that was working on Target's equipment, that doesn't happen here. But nonetheless, everything is interconnected through the network, whether it's an intercom, an HVAC system, door entry systems, they're all connected to the network. So all these things have a certain life expectancy that can be expected before you have to rotate them out in order to match it with current technologies, whether it's servers coming end of life. 2008 servers will be end of life next year. But yeah, I mean, there is a certain migration pattern you have to follow if you wish to receive security updates and patches and things like that. But
25 years is an incredibly long time when it comes to microprocessors and software and all of that, right? So,
And what's your question too? I'll address that a little bit myself. The new systems, because of what happened, are being independently, as far as upgraded and stuff like that, but also independently confirmed as far as cybersecurity and stuff like that. It's not by and down the company itself. It's done by independent people who actually do that for a living to hack stuff. So whatever we're installing here is independently certified to be, I think I say hack proof because there's nothing, there's no such thing, but be the latest software as far as hackable. And Ben has done a great service as far as where he does it, how he does it, and everything. So yeah, I feel your system's pretty secure.
and so the equipment that you provide software, as far as we know, it's the best we can do as far as it communicating with our network and our servers and so on and so forth as we move through time, within reason, obviously.
in following security best practices,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Sounds like we whittled it down pretty darn far.
Yeah.
We just want to bring it forward so you're aware of the expenditure. The next we will bring forward is a purchase order on the requisition list for funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have request to bid Brooks Elementary chiller replacement. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve administration to go out to bid for the Brooks Elementary chiller replacement. Do we have a motion?
So, second.
Discussion?
Yeah. Where to go? Oh, they're right here. Amy. So in the Chronicle, it said that there was I don't know, some custom thing or something regarding the chiller, right? I don't know quite exactly how to take that news article, but in my view, it's a chiller. There's nothing custom about a chiller. It's packaged coolant. So I just want to check with you, really custom. I mean, is...
The reference to custom, I think, was confused with the part that if we were going to replace the part and
Would have been
maintain the chiller, the part would have been custom, not the chiller we're replacing. We're coming in with a new unit that is not custom. It is a carrier unit that we're proposing off the shelf.
So it's a drop-in situation, more or less. Okay,
correct.
Fine. I just want to make sure we're not doing some off-the-wall kind of special.
Not at all.
design.
In fact, one of the benefits of going out to bid is getting it sized to the way to the unit that is there, as well as match it to the other units around our district, which our staff is used to maintaining
And when will you do the replacement?
We will go out to bid. I would expect we would be out to bid upon your approval by the end of September. Into the board in October to award the contract, and over the winter months, November, December, we'll be dropping it in and getting it plugged in and ready for the spring.
Okay.
And we have to go out to bid because of the cost of the chiller?
Correct. With the 45-ton, we're anticipating that will exceed $50,000, especially as we roll in the alpha controls into this project, and over $50,000 requires a bid.
Wait a second, I got another
Oh,
question.
sorry.
I just thought of it off the top of my head, sorry. So with the new control system and with a lot of our equipment being new, I mean, we put in a lot of new HVAC equipment, right? Will we be able to do any kind of predictive maintenance and end-of-life sorts of data looking at? I mean, so that you might be able to predict things better?
When it comes to preventative maintenance or predictive maintenance, there is a schedule to follow when it comes to preventative maintenance as it is regarding any of our equipment that we have in. In regards to predicting end of life exactly, that's just more of a rotation cycle that we'll be putting into place and making sure we have budgeted properly. There could always be that anomaly where it comes through and they say, oh, we're done. Any of them could walk in tomorrow and say that to us unexpected.
Maybe your expert can speak to this, but I mean, just from an engineering point of view, you know, if I put vibration sensors and interconnected them all, if I look at head pressures on auto compressors, if I did all that stuff, right, I could develop an algorithm that would tell me when something's wrong, and would send up a red flag, you know, and we'd be saying, hey, we better get ready to replace this thing.
And honestly, I mean, with endless budget, I could, but it's just not something that is going to be possible.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask you, is there anything like that built into any of this?
With alpha controls, there are alerts and things like that that come
There
through,
are
so that way.
warnings, there's alerts, there's trends that our guys look for.
Yeah.
We have 2 HVAC guys that are on the Alpha system quite regularly looking for anything that seems out of whack. They contact Alpha very regularly, saying, hey, take a look at this, and they take a look at it and give us their expert opinion. We're able to maintain a lot of it, but when we cannot, we bring in Alpha officials to assist.
I mean, there's downsides to connecting everything. The target example is one illustration of how it can go bad. You know, but when you are interconnected with everything, especially in one entity like this 428, there's a lot of great things that could happen, but you have to pay attention and make it happen, right? They're not going to happen by themselves if we don't, you know, set it up in such a way, you know, and then look at it, watch it, and so on.
And our staff does that through the maintenance department as well as through technology. If any alerts come through technology that are red flagged to them, they bring it to our attention.
A lot of these UNC units, including the ones we're looking at replacing, are tied into our SolarWinds product that gives us up and down times of those sensors. So if a building were to lose power for an extended period of time and there's no generator backup or something like that, then yeah, we get alerts in terms of when those units go down.
All right, thanks.
One more. Tammy, as you look at things like a chiller system, there's one chiller system for the entire school. And that's nice. It's a little bit, it's efficient, you're only running one thing and the whole school's getting done. But you've got a lot relying on just one thing. Have we thought about the idea, and get you built into the bidding process, the idea that maybe we should be looking at things on a more zoned basis so that we don't have a system that the chiller goes out and we have to close the school on one day. We can, you know, if we have something like room air conditioning, we would be looking at something where 2 rooms go down and then we can still continue to operate.
Is the building designed that way?
The building may not be designed
It
that
is
way.
currently not designed that way.
We could possibly retrofit or something.
We have that option when it comes to heating. Whenever we put in a boiler, we put in more than one boiler. So we have that backup option because obviously heat in Northern Illinois is actually on a higher importance level than air conditioning. So from a cost perspective, to put in a backup chiller or drop rooftop units everywhere, which are a little more challenging to manage than a chiller would be, you know, the decision has typically gone down the road of doing a chiller. In this situation, it's a 1-for-1 exchange, so to keep costs down, we wouldn't be looking at rezoning.
I haven't seen what's on Brooks, for instance, but I mean, generally, Howard, a chiller might have 2 compressors or 4 compressors. You know, and how deep you go in the refrigeration cycle, how cold the water can get. You might be able to run one of the compressors when another one's down. So you might not lose it entirely.
So it does have time.
Brooks had one.
It has its own backup.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Roll call, please.
Craig Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Jeff Albright,
Yes,
Gary Millet,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
and thank you, everybody.
Next, we have new business and administration. Request for proposal, RFP, and qualifications for board attorneys and legal services. And this is an informational item.
Yes, we're requesting to go out for an RFP for legal services. Currently, right now, we have Hinshaw that handles all of our general types of things and some specific stuff. And we also have others that do some a la carte for tax objections or appeals and intergovernmental agreements. And we feel it's a good time to kind of go out and relook at all those services that we're receiving at the moment. The RFP, Amir helped put it together in line with our board policy because there's some very specific things that we need to look at in terms of looking for legal services. So the draft was put with the board agenda item for you to take a look at. Today is just for informational, and the plan is to bring it back at the next meeting for your consideration to approve, for us to go out and put it out on the street. And the process would really get us to awarding legal services sometime in February, the February 20th meeting, because there is quite a prescribed process to go through. And
put the RFP out there. We're looking, again, to be flexible in terms of the services we're looking for, either, again, one firm that does it all, or a couple firms that do some specific things. So the RFP is written to do that, so we have some flexibility. Howard?
Do we have will the ISBE be involved in this as far as recommendations and things like that? Do we work from out of their lists and things like that?
Well, what we did actually, Amir did contact the IASB, which is the Illinois Association of School Boards, and they have a list of some attorneys, and there's a lot of school district attorneys out there, so we will reach out to them through the various organizations, and then also put it in the paper so others can solicit as well. They kind of give you some guidelines, but they will not review the RFP for us. So you really can't have a, legal opinion from that.
As far as providing people that we want to include when we send stuff out.
Right, yes, yeah, and we have a pretty large list of various attorneys out there.
There's a booklet that comes out each year that has all of the legal firms in Illinois and even Wisconsin and Indiana. But if we send it to the Illinois Association of School Boards, it'll be distributed through their network as well. So we'll have plenty of eyes on it.
It will be, one of the things that between now and February is that we're gonna be having to figure out how to compare one bid with another bid. I mean, in other words, we're gonna have to kind of be scrutinizing that. You guys will be doing that and bringing those things before us.
Right. Yeah, and in the timeline that's in the bids, it does include, once we do put it out there, we get all the proposals back, then it's really at that point vetting who we would want to bring in for interviews, because obviously we'll probably get quite a few of them, so you have to kind of figure out which ones you want. And then also specifically what areas would we want more a la carte and what areas do we want like one firm to kind of take care of.
And we envision this process to look very much like Human Resource Department when we were looking at insurance vendors. That we have a committee from the Ed Center, certainly Victoria, to be a part of that vetting process, and then the final review process, the interview, and then the selection. The board obviously will have that put on.
So do we have a consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that. It keeps that in the drafting. Although RFP is for full range of legal services, District 420 reserves the right to retain individual firms for discrete areas of legal services.
Yeah,
that's really important.
Yeah, very clear with that. Yes.
Because right now, we're kind of split up like that anyway.
Yeah, we are.
I mean, we have various individuals from different firms. So we'll throw this on the street and see what comes back.
Well, one of the things is people move around, right? So you may have an expert that's great, and then they switch to some other firm, but you want to keep that person, for instance, so.
Right, exactly.
I think it's really important to keep that statement in there.
Yes. All right, so with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
All right.